This episode is sponsored by the Freedom Builder System. For just $57 a month, you can get my custom Biz Builder AI, plus membership in the Freedom Builder community. Think of it as having me, your personal business coach and corporate escape Sherpa, right in your pocket 24/7. Biz Builder AI is your business building tool with 5 Sherpas in one powerful tool. It's a coach in AI form that helps you choose the right idea, create offers, build your financial runway, and market yourself without the cringe. And the Freedom Builder membership gives you the training, community, and accountability to actually follow through. So you're never doing this alone. Think of it as clarity, tools, and support all in one for less than the cost of a dinner out and a fraction of what you'd spend on private coaching. Check the show notes for the link, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Gen X Remix, Midlife Laughs and Next Acts, the podcast for bold women who are ready to build a business that actually lights you up and escape corporate. Yes, in that order. I'm your host, Tabatha Jones, the Corporate Escape Sherpa. And today's episode is Storytelling Remix. We're amplifying voices and building community with our guest, Julie Marty Pearson. She's a podcaster, speaker, and host who helps women share their stories through podcasting and community. Today, we're digging into Julie's own remix from academia to audio, why storytelling beats stats every time, how to be strategic as a podcast guest, and the power of women's spaces like the Women's Podcaster Party. Expect practical tips, a little bit of fun, and some pet love. If you're building before you bounce, be sure to hit follow, drop a 5-star review, grab my free guide, the Corporate Escape Starter Kit. It's your step-by-step jumpstart to a business that actually fits your life. The link will be in the show notes. All right, friend, let's get into it. Hey, Julie, welcome to the Gen X Remix. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here. I am doing well. As we were chatting a little bit before we started, I'm in California where it's trying to pretend that it's going to be fall, but we know we're going to get some warm weather back, which I'm very excited about.
It always does that to us in the fall, like pretend, and then, oh no, it's still summer.
It's still summer. Awesome. Well, we are excited to dive into your story today. So my first question is, can you tell us a bit about your own remix story?
Yeah. So funny enough, it started around my 40th birthday. And at that point, I had a career in higher education. I worked in various colleges and universities in California. I taught psychology and statistics, and I also was full-time staff and administrator. I did a lot of accreditation and assessment work. So very research heavy report writing, very academic world. And I was busy, but to move up, you have to move schools. So I was, for the last 5 or 6 years of my career in that world, I was commuting. So I was living somewhere else during the week and coming home on the weekends. So I rented rooms from people I worked with, or I lived in on-campus housing, which was an experience because I'd never lived in a dorm. So I got that experience. And even though I love that world and I love higher ed, I love teaching and learning and all of that, the commuting and the stress of accreditation work were taking a toll on me. And 2 weeks after I turned 40, I was diagnosed with kidney disease. So my body was showing the effects of what I had been putting it through. And, I would say probably from about 2012, when I graduated with my doctorate, until that point, I'd really just been doing all the things and chasing the jobs and, doing what I thought was my career. But it's still stressful, and commuting added more financial stress. So I actually had to take a couple months off of work to deal with the kidney diagnosis and figure out what was going on. I went back to work, and then less than 2 months later, my dad passed away. So it was 6 months of a lot. And ultimately, over the next year or so, I tried to go back to that world, but it just didn't work. My heart wasn't in it anymore. My body couldn't do it. And ultimately, before COVID hit, I had left my last job in higher ed. I had a hysterectomy. And then COVID hit, and I had no job. I had nowhere to be. I couldn't even get a job in my old world because the schools were all closed. And so that was really those 2 years leading up to that was when my remix happened, because I kind of had to decide what the rest of my life was going to look like. And, it's not easy to do a really big pivot in your career, especially when I'd been, 20 years in this world and I loved it. But I was at the point of realizing it just wasn't right for me anymore and what I needed, both physically and emotionally. And so during COVID, and as we kind of came out of that, I started my own coaching business. And I started with career coaching because obviously that's what I knew, having worked in that world. But during that process of starting my business, I took a class on podcasting. I'm like, oh, what's this? Is this something I should do? And I never really got off the ground on career coaching because I just wasn't passionate about it. Like, I wasn't excited to get up and talk about resumes.
That's so weird.
And I
Who
know
doesn't
some
love
people
talking
are,
about resumes?
right. So I decided to take some advice and just do it about something I could talk about with no notice, with no prep, any day, any time, and that is animals. And I always say, if this is the video version behind me, it always explains all the photos, but animals and my pets have always played a really big role in my life. I've always felt very connected to animals. I was the little girl that wanted to play with the dog and the cat, not the babies. That's just always been who I am. And I've had health issues most of my life. I missed over a year of school when I was younger. And during that time, my parents let me get a puppy. And that puppy became my best friend and was with me all the way through college. And so I started podcasting. I knew a little, but not a lot. And I started putting it out there, no editing, no nothing. And then I started having people reach out to me and say they were listening and wanted to be on. And it was this kind of evolution into a whole new world for me. And that's really where my remix, really, really happened and completely pivoted me into full time into the world of podcasting.
What a great story. And so many points that I know many of our listeners can resonate with. I resonate with it. Getting to that point of just your body is saying, you're not on the right track anymore, sister. And the fact that sometimes it's really hard to listen to that. It's kind of we'll just push through, we'll do this thing and we'll get right back on it. But it can get really hard when you realize that's not your place or your purpose any longer. Wow.
Yeah, and I've talked about this on my own podcast a little, but I think sometimes our brains want certain things, but our bodies can only do so much. And, I've had to listen to my body over time. There were times I had to stop things or take breaks because I was, worn out. But sometimes it's just really hard to resolve that in your head of what you thought your life was or your career or whatever it may be. And, then figure out what it is going to be. And sometimes having options is also overwhelming. Like, oh, what do I do? I have all these things to pick from. And so that it's really been a journey for me over the last 5 years of figuring that out. And I think I still am, but that's also the life of an entrepreneur too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned that on my own journey. Started out in the career coaching space also. Don't love talking about resumes. I'm good at it. I know how to make them work, but it's not really my favorite topic. My favorite is all about that confidence building and getting you ready for what's next. And, as I've pivoted more into business building and escaping corporate, helping women in their 40s and 50s make a plan to do something new, there's a lot of resistance, right? But I don't know that, but this is where I'm at, but this is the paycheck I need. This is yeah, I know I'm sick. Yes, I know I'm miserable, but I worked really hard to get there. Did you have any of those thoughts as you were making your preparations to change things up?
Still do sometimes, especially when I'm looking at my student loan debt and I'm like, oh gosh, in business, it's hard because there isn't always a consistent source of income. Things change, what you offer changes, how many clients you have. And coming from a world where I had a consistent income and always knew there would be money if I just kept, doing it. But then I also know now, and I actually get to ask myself, like, when I'm doing something, like, does this bring me joy? Like, do I enjoy doing this? And I've taken on some clients where I do things for them, and then I realize, I don't really like this. Like, I actually dread having to do this part of the job. And you hear that with people, whether it's the social media stuff or editing a podcast. Some people really hate that. And so for me, it's being conscious of where I enjoy spending my time, which also means that's what I should be doing more of, because it's what I'm good at. But I don't want to do some of the other things. And so I think that for me has been hard, because I've always been the yes person. I've always been, of course I can do that, and you say yes to things and you're like, wait, what did I get myself into? So I think that's a lot of what I have really dealt with. But I also think it's the expectations of what's going to come from something. And I see that so much in podcasting, this idea, oh, I'm going to start a podcast and then I'll have all these clients, or then I'll be famous. And it's like, well, that's not really how it works. And it's also can be lonely, right? We do a lot of it alone behind the scenes. We put it out there and there's no real obvious immediate reaction. And so it's like, are people listening? Do they care? Is this landing? Does it matter? So that's a lot of what I find myself still today, day to day, week to week, like trying to figure out all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely a journey. And knowing that you came from academics, I am guessing that you love learning.
Yes.
I am the same. So if there's something I don't know, I get so excited that I get to go figure it out. But to your point, sometimes we're doing something that we're good at or we know how to do. But if we stop and step back and say, did I really like doing that? Do I really enjoy doing this? Or is it something maybe I should outsource? Maybe I should outsource this piece of it and focus on my zone of bliss, as one of my friends calls it. And I'm like, yeah, that's the way to do it. And so I have started, I actually read the book 10X is easier than 2X. So good. But it made me realize, like, stop struggling to edit a podcast. Like, that's not my forte. Neither is graphic design. I still try to fake it, but it's not my thing. So hire the people that are great at it, that love it. They can't wait to go and help build you up so you can focus on those really important things that are fun and light you up and bring change and transformation to your clients.
Absolutely. And I think that sometimes we also have to help our clients see that, right?
Yeah.
I have a lot of people come to me, well, I want to start a podcast. Okay, let's step back. Why? Like, I start with the why, whether you're guesting or speaking or podcasting. Like, don't just do it because everyone else is or someone told you to. You have to understand that before you go put all your effort into it. And so sometimes I have to remind myself of that. Like, why am I doing this? Is this really a good good use of my time and my effort and things like that?
Yeah, I love that. And then I love the asking why. I always have clients start with that also. Like, why? Why is this the right business? Why is this important? Why does it make you happy? But then also knowing that even though you're on the right path toward why, it's okay to change things up. So if we'll just use podcasting as an example. If you start a podcast and figure out, oh my gosh, this is not my thing, it's okay to step back and assess it and pivot. Maybe there's something different that you really should be doing that makes you happier. So I think that's something that we get so stuck in I've started this and I've invested that and I've got to keep going. And you're like, but on the inside, I'm dying. I feel like I'm back in my corporate job. I'm, feeling all these things. So
right,
having that why and then knowing it's okay. You get to choose your life. You get to choose what you do each day. Yes, the bills are still due. And yes, you still need to make sure you can pay those because that's important, as is,
right.
Food and emotional support snacks. But we've got to own our power in that space. So I have so many questions for you because I know we went into pets and then I'm looking at the questions that I had prepped for you. So let's start with pets. Who are your pet friends right now? Who lives in your house?
Well, our current fur family includes 3 cats. We have 3 cats. We have Charlie, who is 16, Frenchie, who is 12, and then Pumpkin, which you can see a little baby photo of her there, is our baby who will be 3 in October. And, wide range of personalities as well as ages, and they all came to us in different ways. But Pumpkin, she was one of 6 that I actually fostered. And when I say my podcast changed my life, I really mean it, not just with my business, but personally. So I always considered myself an animal advocate, but I realized pretty quickly speaking to people who work in shelters and rescues, like, oh, I only knew a little bit of the reality of what is happening with animals and animal welfare. And so I started volunteering and I fostered. So we fostered a litter of 6, which was basically a full-time job because they were only about 2 weeks old. So they were bottle babies and you would feed them. And by the time you get to 6, number 1 was hungry again.
Can you imagine being a cat mom?
Oh my gosh.
Like, no, thank you.
Moms
I
of
guess
all
you can do them
types,
all at once, but
right. But still, they deserve all the kudos.
all of it.
And so that was a over 6-week process that we had them. And then Pumpkin was the one that when I took them to the shelter and they all were, big enough and old enough to be adopted, Pumpkin was officially adopted by me and brought back home. And, she brings us so much joy that it's kind of my daily reminder of why I do that podcast is I realized that so much in the world of animal rescue is that people just don't know, we don't know what we don't know. And so a lot of that podcast now is me interviewing people so that they can share their story, what they do, how to help and advocate, and then really educate people around what is fostering, why is adoption important, what does no kill mean, all these things that I knew some of, but I learned so much more actually going to the shelter and volunteering and working and fostering. And even though that is not something my heart can take full time to be in that world, again, props to shelter workers. They are, really doing the work, the hardest stuff. My podcast is my way of helping. And so that podcast, The Story of My Pet, still exists 3.5 years later. It is small but mighty, and I take breaks when I need to and have to focus on other things, but people are always listening and always reaching out to be on it. And it just isn't just the stories of rescues and shelters. It's people sharing how pets have changed their life. So much. We talk a lot about mental health and how pets help us through tough times. But also just, the importance that pets roles play in our lives and how not everybody understands it. And that's okay. But they are family and we treat them as such. And so I really just enjoy having those conversations, but also helping rescues and nonprofits get a little visibility for what they're doing to help animals in different communities.
That's so amazing. I share a lot of posts from rescues, from our local animal shelter, from anyone rehoming a pet, whatever's going on. And I'm sure people who follow me, especially on Facebook, are like, oh my gosh, how many more? I'm like, until they have homes. Like you're going to see them all.
There's an endless
homes.
Supply, unfortunately. And it is interesting. One of the things I did at the shelter for a while was I helped do the dog adoption events out in the public. And that really opened my eyes to misinformation, uneducation, and people just not understanding like how shelters work and why you spay and neuter and all these different things. I was like, wow, no wonder it's an uphill battle for all of these people trying to help the animals. And, our fur family also has other animals. We have 2 tortoises. My husband has tarantulas and a scorpion. He loves all of that and knows how to take care of them. So we even had a rescue possum at one point.
That's kind of a whole dream come true, but the mama possum here won't let me have one.
Oh, let me tell you, I learned so much about possums and how amazing they are and what they do for our environment. And they're very cat-like also. So, I think it's just my love of all animals and getting to learn. And luckily my husband is the same way. And he loves, that possum ate better than I did while we had it. That's all I can say. He did all the research and made him fresh food. Oh. So, it brings me joy to get to talk about that with people, as I can tell it does you too. So that podcast is a lot of fun. Obviously, it's a lot of work too, but I really love keeping it going and kind of sharing those stories with the world.
Yeah, it's so important. And I'm laughing about the possum eating better than you. We went on this little trend. I adopted my dog when she was 3. She's my chief happiness officer. She's under my desk listening to everything I say right now. She'll move her foot to touch my foot every so often just to make sure I haven't moved. But we went through this little phase. We're like, okay, we're going to cook her food. We're going to make her food. It's way better than any dog food, whatever. My husband came in and he's like, oh my God, it smells so good. What'd you make for dinner? I don't cook. And I said, it is dog food, but if you add salt and pepper, you can absolutely eat it. But if you'd like to make dinner and you want something else, feel free.
I know
But
sometimes the pets get the best of everything, right?
they do. She like hops in the bed, she's in the middle. She hops on the couch, she's in the middle. And, the joke at our house is, does she really need another stuffy? And my answer is always yes.
Yeah. It's so funny. Our oldest Charlie, he is, over 16 now. He's diabetic and has arthritis. So he's a little slow moving, but he has learned if he hears me go to the kitchen to fill up my water or get ice or whatever, I turn around and there he is by his bowl, like, oh, treats. He's done it already 4 times today. It's like, no, Charlie, you don't get treats every time I come in here.
That's hilarious. That's how we get the vet lecture. And we have to hide the pup cup that's waiting in the car for after the appointment.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So good. All right. So I could talk about pets all day because like you, I am so passionate about animals. I think they're so much better than people in so many ways, and they just deserve such great lives. I hope that people listen to your podcast more and learn more about the adoption process and why. I mean, I shared with you before we started recording, a gently used dog that's already past the puppy phase is my ideal dream dog. Like a 3-year-old, 3 to 5, that's the perfect dog. This one is a bit of an only child because when she's tired, she gets very snarly. But then my goal in the future is to be able to foster for fosters. So when a foster parent goes on vacation, I can take care of their foster pets until they come back. So
I love that. That's a really great thing to have. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, let's shift a little bit from pets. I know you also coach clients. Tell me a little bit about your work in that space.
Yeah, so as I got deeper into podcasting, I realized a few things. One, there still aren't enough women's voices. It's a very male dominated place. That's where it started. And even though you see more, there's still not enough. And I think in the world today, we need women's stories. I think there's things we can all share that can help someone else not feel alone or go through what we went through. But also I realized that people don't really know. I've met a lot of women in business who don't really understand what podcasting is or why they would use it or even be a part of it. And so I guess my teacher hat turned on and I'm like, well, I can help people learn about how they can tap into podcasting because it's not going anywhere. It just continues to grow. And there's even more variety in how people are doing it. So about 2 years ago, after attending my first big in-person podcasting conference, it was kind of my push like, okay, this is what I want to do with my coaching. And so my coaching is really about understanding the individual and their business and figuring out where in podcasting is the right place for them to start if they haven't already. I meet women who haven't done anything in podcasting. I meet some who have done a little guesting, but are just saying yes to whoever asks them, or has been told by someone, whether it's a coach or somebody else, I need a podcast. And so what I find my coaching is like, okay, let's back up. Let's understand your business, who you help, and what would be the right place to do it. I always say I'm not a podcast pusher. I do not believe everyone needs one. But you shouldn't be not tapping into it as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And so podcast guesting is a really great way to do that. But a lot of people don't know how to be strategic about it in terms of finding the right podcast to guest on, what to use with it once it's out. So a lot of my coaching really is around that whole process of figuring out what is right for each individual and their business, and then helping them kind of get set up for success to do that consistently. I have helped other people start podcasts. I like to say I can help you start a podcast on a budget because I don't believe it needs to be expensive. There are obvious costs you have to have, but it shouldn't cost you hundreds of dollars of equipment or thousands of dollars for a production company. Unless you're at a point in business where you can afford that and just want to show up for the interview, great. I know people who can do that for you. I'm really more people looking at indie podcasters who are going to do most of it themselves, but want to have a really good plan in place. So once they launch, they can keep it going, because that's where we see a lot of the pod fade is after those first 5 to 10 episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of things that you said really kind of hit points for me. I shared that I started this podcast about a year ago and I didn't really have a strategy. I didn't really know. And so again, I'll be making a couple changes in the new year, but Now that I've learned so many things, I think working with someone like you could have helped save me a lot of time and frustration and probably kept a few swear words out of my mouth. So absolutely see the value in what you're doing. The other piece is the guesting. So initially, when I was guesting on podcasts, I was just throwing stuff at the wall to see what stuck, joining whatever podcast had invited me on. And I learned very quickly in that aspect that there is a difference. It's great to come out and tell your story and it's fun and you meet new people. But when you're on a podcast that definitely is more aligned with who you serve, the phone calls or the connections that come from that are so much stronger. And, full transparency, I don't enjoy long sales calls. I don't. I love talking about what I do. I love sharing and inviting you to my program. I don't love the long, like all the things. What I've learned with a podcast is when you tell your story strategically, you get the call, the person's ready to go. There's not, 50 questions and that feeling of pressure and, all of that. And so the advice that you're giving is so valuable that I hope our listener is hearing. If you're wanting to start a podcast, reach out to Julie because she would be able to help you and give you those great strategies.
Well, and nobody has to know it all. We don't have to have all of our ducks in a row. I do also see that where people are like, well, no, I don't have everything ready. It's like, well, you're never going to be ready. You're getting ready to be ready. And podcasting, the thing about it is it's constantly changing. So honestly, there's always something I'm adjusting because the tech changes, the way I want to do it. And the other great thing about that, like you said in podcasting, it's not set in stone. It's not like a book. Once it goes to print, you can't change it. If I decide tomorrow I want to shift the focus of my podcast, I can change the name. I don't lose all that other content, but I can shift to what I want to do now or what people really need now. And I think that's a hard thing for us to get used to because we feel like, well, no, we set it up. It's like, it's okay. I know people who have had the same RSS feed for their podcast, but it's had 4 or 5 different names as their business has evolved and who they work with has changed. And the first few episodes I did of The Story of My Pet, I didn't even edit. It was Zoom. There were dogs barking, interruptions. People still listened and it still went somewhere. And I think in podcasting, yes, there are certain things you have to have ready, but you're also going to learn as you do it, what you like, what you don't like. Maybe, as you go, you realize, oh, no, I don't want to do long episodes, or no, I need longer episodes. I really want to get into this more than just 10 minutes. So some of it, as I've learned, is you just have to do it. But you said this earlier, and I think this is really important. Whether you're guesting or hosting a show, you don't know if you like it until you try it. And so you have to try it and see if you like it. And I've had people say, oh, no. And then they start guesting and like, oh, I don't mind this. I actually enjoy this process. It's like you don't really know what it is until you put yourself in the, in the situation and test it out.
Yeah, it's been fun. And I say that I'm an extreme extrovert, so I don't generally clench up on those types in conversations on video. And it's been fun because one, you meet really great people. Most are already running a business. Some of them may even be running a business where you can become referral partners for each other, or where they may be somebody who you're like, oh my gosh, I think you would be a great coach for me. Let's swap some services, or, something along those lines. So absolutely, I would say take one little bitty step, and podcasting is actually fairly comfortable once you've kind of tried it that one time and realized that, oh, it's actually easier than I expected.
And I can say as an introvert, I am someone who gains my energy and regenerates alone or with 1 or 2 people. It's different when you're in the front of the mic and you're talking. It's just conversation. And that's how I host mine. I want it to be conversational, like we're friends talking about something. And structured is fine. I could do those interviews too. But like you said earlier, the strategy is really in how you're sharing your story and how you're relating it to your business or how you help people. And I think that's where some people lack the clarity, that they just get on there and, answer questions, but they're not thinking about, well, why are you answering it that way? And how does that lead back to your business? And we don't want to be salesy, but we're also there for a purpose. And so some of that is more obvious to some of us who've been doing it, but some other people are brand new. And it's like, no, this is what you do. Or please don't ask to be on a podcast you've never listened to. I mean, that may seem obvious, but It's not.
It's not. And it's so funny. I always, when I'm getting on a podcast, I always listen to the podcast because one, I want to know, do they ask any zingers at the end? They're going to stump me. I had someone ask me at the end of a podcast recording once, if you were in New York and you're standing in Times Square and your picture's on a billboard, what does it say? I'm like, I need time to think about that. I don't know. So I like to listen and catch that. I like to understand the tone, the personality. Really, it helps me prepare. And then it also lets me leave a review for that podcast host, which then helps them remember me a little bit. It also helps them get more views so that they, my audience is starting to see maybe where I'm sharing feedback, or they may see that, wow, this person has a lot of reviews. Let me listen to that. So there's definitely a lot of value there.
Yeah, and I also think I've had people say to me, well, I showed up and I didn't know it was live, or I didn't know I would be on camera. And it's like, well, if you've looked at the podcast, you're going to know how they do it. Length of time, is it audio, is it video, all of those things. And so there's a lot of ways you can prep yourself without even having to do much other than go to the podcast and learn about it. And yeah, I think listening is really important. You hear how the host, does it. What kind of questions do they ask? Do they, ask the same question every episode? There's a lot of that you can learn just by listening. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And on the flip side of listening, I know storytelling. I was listening as you were telling your story at the beginning, and I know storytelling is a big part of your work. So tell us a little bit about why you believe storytelling is so important for entrepreneurs and business owners. And I'm assuming that means on a podcast or not on a podcast.
Absolutely. Any type of storytelling we do, whether it's in our marketing emails or our social media posts or speaking or podcast guesting, people really want to get to know who we are as a person. And so sharing, whether it's the story behind why you started your business or the story behind why you started your podcast, whatever it may be, that is building a connection with them. And the connection, one of the reasons podcasting is so popular is because it builds a connection. It's very intimate to have someone put you in their ear pods or on your headphones or in their car stereo and listen to you, listen to your story, your conversation, and even watching you on YouTube. It's a pretty personal experience. And so what I found is the story is powerful. It's what connects us. There's always going to be something in the story you tell that someone has experienced, or it reminds them of something or someone. And there's research out there that shows commercials, marketing, if you do it with numbers and facts, if you do it with a story, the story is what people remember, not the numbers or the facts. And so I think that a lot of us want to give value and teach and be like, this is how I can help you, XYZ. But that's not as exciting as saying, well, let me tell you about myself and how I got here and how I can help you do the same thing. That's a very different angle. And it also feels less salesy and less maybe gimmicky, even some for people. And so one of the things I help my clients do and people in my membership is really think about what are those stories in your life that you could use a piece of to not only share who you are, but then connect it to your business or how you help people in your business.
That's great advice. I kind of, as you were speaking, reflecting back, I hosted a women's retreat this past weekend, and storytelling actually showed the entire group how we were all connected. I was sharing a bit of my personal story that I don't share very often, shared a bit then of my corporate story and entrepreneur story. And I saw tears. I saw a lot of head nods. I had a lot of conversations after the fact about how they had felt they were so alone in this space and that they didn't realize that, somebody so close to them, somebody standing literally in their room, had a lot of similar experiences. And it's how we connect to people. It's how we relate. It's how the world really could continue to work better if we continue telling those stories and finding those things we have in common.
Right. And I think that is part of it too, especially for women entrepreneurs and business. There's so much of what we go through that there's a connectiveness to it, whether it's our physical health as we change as we get older, or, different struggles we have with our families or our career, that, we've always kind of been told not to share it. Don't share too much. Just, be a good girl and keep it to yourself. But by sharing it, someone else is like, I'm going through that right now. I feel like so much better, that I'm not crazy, that I'm feeling like this, or someone told me this and I was upset. And so there's so many little things I think in storytelling that it helps people feel seen, feel heard, feel valued, but it also helps them get to know you and how you talk about things and what your perspective is. And not every person is, I'm not going to be the right coach for every person. And there's lots of coaches that do similar things. But I also want people to get to know me before they decide to, invest in working with me too. And I think that's really powerful to connect with people in that way, whether it's through your own marketing or through being a guest or speaking. That's a powerful tool to have. And it's just figuring out how to use your story in that way.
I love that. And you use the Gen X terms of just be a good girl.
Yep.
Stop being a good girl. Stop it.
Uh-huh.
You have permission right now to go forth and be a bad girl. Do what you got to do.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about guesting on podcasts. I know you shared that it's a valuable strategy. I 100% agree with that. What are 2 tips maybe that you can share with our listener for those who are thinking about becoming a guest, but aren't really sure of how to approach it? What are 2 tips you can share with them?
Well, one I always share is to do some research. And there's many ways you could do this, but one of the ones I always suggest is there's a website called listennotes.com. It is a podcast directory. So pretty much every podcast that exists as a traditional podcast, audio only, is on this directory. And you can search by topic, keyword, category. You can search people's names. If you remember somebody on a podcast 2 years ago and you want to find it. But it's a great tool because when you look at a podcast there, it gives you more than just like the title and the description. It shows you, when did the podcast start? How often do they post new episodes? How long are the episodes on average? It gives you a lot more data that you can't see, like if you're an Apple Podcasts or Spotify listening. And what's great about it is once you look at one, it gives you recommendations of other similar podcasts. So you can look at your niche, what you do in your business, how you help people, or topics you like to speak on, and you can search podcasts, and then you can go to the podcast website, look around, because a lot of time podcasts on their website will say, I'm looking for speakers, click this link or send me an email. So it is researching what kind of podcasts are out there in your niche or what you like to talk about, but it also gives you data about the podcast. You can see pretty quickly, is it active? If they haven't had an episode in 6 months or a year, okay, then don't even look at it because they're not active. So it's not worth your time. And so I like to have people go through that process because one, you start to see the vast amount of podcasts around certain topics, but you can also see the different ways they approach it. Whether it's a solo hosted show, a co-host, or a panel, there's all these different ways people are doing it. And that really can give you data to make the best decisions about which podcast to actually spend your time asking to be on, pitching yourself, things like that. So that's the number one. I always say research, and I obviously am a researcher, so I like to help people with that process. But 2 is if you don't have a lot of time and you don't have a lot of time to spend that time researching, I highly recommend a podcast matching service. So I use and love Podmatch. Podmatch.com is an incredible software that matches podcast guests with podcasts, and they have thousands of people on there. And I think I heard Alex Sanfilippo, who created it, say they had like 1,500 active episodes or something like that currently that have been matched through their system. And the great thing about it is it's also a community. He offers a lot of learning there, a lot of support, but it's really easy to use. You create your profile and then you get matches every day and you decide, is this a good match or not? You don't have to reach out to them. And so I have actually had 20 guest episodes this year myself, and probably 60 to 70% of those were through Podmatch. And so it takes a lot of the guessing game out because people aren't going to be there if they're not actively podcasting or actively looking for guests. And you don't have to say yes to ones you're matched with, but right there in the system, it allows you to listen to it. It gives very specific notes about, what the flow is, how they record, is it live, all these different things. But most importantly, it says who listens to the podcast. And that is really, like you mentioned earlier, if you want to be strategic, you need to know who is listening to the podcast you're going to be on. Now, I've been matched with some great podcasts there that are hosted by men. That's great. Have a lot of male guests, but then they show that it's mostly men listening. And it doesn't mean I can't talk to them. I can talk to men, but the majority of the people I work with are women. And so it's a question of, do I want to spend my time and effort being on that show, or maybe find the next show that's a better fit for me to find my ideal clients? So those are two really important things you can do to get started and to kind of start to get a feel of maybe what some options are for you in guesting.
Yeah, I love that. I'll include both of those links in the show notes. Listen Notes is new to me. Podmatch, I'm on there. I think that's how we matched. And I agree. It's a great tool for, as a host, finding guests, but also a great tool for guests to find shows to come on and talk about their expertise. The only thing that I would add onto that is when you reach out to a host to show up on their podcast, make sure you've done enough research so that your introduction makes sense. I get a lot of, and I came from corporate, I've led a lot of people, and I'm super rigid in some ways. If I get a request and it doesn't reference how their topic ties to the show, I'll just skip it. Sometimes I just have, I think I'd be a great guest for your show. I'm like, need a little more than that. I'm not going to go look you up and research you. So those who are listening thinking, oh, podcast sounds amazing, take the time to do a really nice introduction pitch. You can use AI for it. I use AI for everything, but I use AI for it all the time.
There's a spot in Podmatch that you can say, why was I matched? And it'll give you a little blurb like, this is what they talk about, and this is what you talk about, and why you're a good match. So they help you a lot. But I have to go back to that because as a podcast host and as a host of two different shows, I get cold DMs and emails every single day. And I can tell within the first sentence or two, if one, they've ever listened to my podcast, or two, they've even read the name of my podcast. I get people, all these amazing entrepreneurs and business owners pitching themselves all these things to the story of my pet. I'm like, well, you haven't listened because this is not what we talk about on this. And it actually, and what's even more annoying, I've had this happen recently a couple of times. Someone will send an email. I read it briefly. Okay, you're not a match. I'm going through my emails quickly. Then another follow-up and another follow-up. Like, now you're actually really being annoying because, I don't have time always to answer every email. And I try to, when I see it's not a connection, I'll just say, this is not what my podcast is about, not really a good fit. But I also don't like it when it's like an email every week, like they're trying to bump themselves up in your list. It's like, as hosts, we have so much to do. That's not going to make us want you anymore, let alone the fact that you're pitching yourself for something that's not even a good fit.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. All of it. Yes. Oh my gosh. I know. I'm like missing client emails with the 50 pitches.
Yes. And as Gen Xers, it goes back to kind of what we were taught, like form letters. You have your cover letter for your resume and you just send it out to everyone. But no, you have to tailor it. You have to make it personal. You should be connecting with them. Like, do something that shows a little extra effort, because that's what, as hosts, we're going to respond to, versus something that we can tell is just, you're literally copying and pasting this to all different podcasts you're approaching.
Exactly. So those of you who didn't catch that, just rewind a little bit and take some notes from that, because that's a really important bit of advice as you're applying for podcast shows and to be a guest. Let's shift just a little more to talk about the Women's Podcaster Party. What is that and why is it so important?
Yeah, so I was very lucky early in my podcasting journey to find a small community membership I was a part of. It was co-ed, but it was mostly women. And, that kept me going because I got to meet with them once a month and we all just kind of vented about what we're having a hard time with, but we also learned new things and got to meet other people in podcasting. And as I kind of fully shifted into the space, what I realized was missing was really spaces for women podcasters to talk and connect. And I love my larger podcast communities like Podfest. But, there are things we want to ask or talk about that maybe we don't feel comfortable in a Zoom with 40 or 50 people or a Zoom with men. And so there had been some communities like that had kind of died off. And so about a year and a half ago, I thought, well, let's see what'll happen. And so I called it the Women's Podcaster Party to make it fun, a little lighter. And it really is just a community for networking. I host 2 events every month. and it's an hour long. And the first part, we let everybody in the room do a quick introduction so everybody meets everyone. I bring a speaker that does something in the world of podcasting to kind of share their journey, but also give some value. And then we do breakout rooms so people can meet each other a little more intimately. And really what it is a space for women wherever you are in podcasting, whether you've done anything or you've been guesting or you have a podcast, to come and meet other people. Great way to connect with potential guests and hosts, but also to hear like what they're doing and what they've changed or what they've learned, because their podcasting is so wide that we can't keep up with all of it. And so I want to create a space where people feel comfortable sharing, but also maybe asking those questions they don't feel comfortable asking in other Zoom rooms or other communities. And luckily, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback. There are definitely some months where I'm like, is anybody going to show up? But over time, I have a momentum of different people wanting to come and speak and people really being excited about attending and, learning something new, meeting new people. And so I'm keeping that community going. It's totally free to attend. People are welcome to come anytime. And I really just love the feeling of the community for women in podcasting, because not only do we need more of us, those of us there need support. We need to feel like we have people we can lean on and go to when we're having a hard time. And that's really what I'm trying to create there.
No, I love that so much. A lot of people underestimate the loneliness that comes sometimes with being an entrepreneur and feeling like you're a little alone, or maybe not knowing who you can ask. So the community that you've created, that's so powerful. And I'm sure you're serving so many women in there with just great nuggets. And then just letting the community support each other. That's huge.
And I think sometimes I've realized that maybe I'm doing it a little bit for myself.
That's all right.
It is lonely, and it's nice to know, next week I get to see some of my friends. And, there's still a lot of work behind the scenes of me promoting it and reminding people to attend and creating the space and hosting. But I do get a sense of, belongingness and community, but also a little energized when I get to host those and interact with everyone. And I really love bringing in women I've met through podcasting that I love, that have been my coaches or have taught me something. And I can bring in them and I can literally see on the faces of everybody just loving what they're hearing. Or, we've talked about things from AI to email marketing to growing social media with a small audience. And so they are tactile things we can use in our business, but it's also just, bridging the gap, because there are so many incredible women in podcasting, but we all don't know each other. And that's what really that momentum is what I really love being a part of.
Yeah, that's so great. So, Julie, you've shared so much wisdom, so much fun insight. Love the pet talk. I could talk about pets. I'm telling you, people get tired of hearing about my dog, I'm sure. She's my chief happiness officer. She has a job.
I love that. I might have to, I don't know. Pumpkin really isn't a happiness officer, but she does like to be seen. Sometimes she'll just jump right here like, excuse me, you are not giving me enough attention. But I will say on that podcast, it's hard for us to keep it under an hour, because once you get two people wwho love pets talking, we could go for hours.
I know. At the beginning, I'm like, we record for about a half an hour. Well, let's just keep talking about our pets, shall we?
Yep.
Oh my gosh. But so much great information. And I love the advice that you're sharing and the encouragement for helping women start these podcasts and really get their message out in the world. And if they're not ready to start, or maybe they don't want to start, that guesting is absolutely another way to get in there and get your word out. So that is fantastic. If our listener wants to connect with you to learn more about what you're doing, to learn more about the Women's Podcaster Party, I think I said it right. Yes.
Yes.
How can they connect with you to learn more?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to my website, which is simply juliemartypearson.com. And I have all of my upcoming and current events listed there, my podcast, my client's podcast, as well as all my guest episodes. So it's a great place to get to know me and look around and see what aspect of my business and world you might want to become a part of.
Excellent. Thank you. We'll make sure those links are in the show notes. And then before we sign off, do you have any final words of inspiration or advice for our listener today?
Yeah, I think it's just start. I know myself and a lot of people in the world of business have to think through things and set it all up. But if you've been thinking about starting a podcast or guesting or speaking, whatever it may be in that world, is just to do it, just to try it and see how it feels, because you're going to feel pretty quickly if you feel like you could do it and you could really, grow in that space. And I think it's important for people to really try it, dip their toe in even, and you'll know if it works for you or not. And it can be scary and can be overwhelming, but maybe do it with someone you trust, someone the first couple episodes of guesting I did were on fun things, talking about movies and things like that. So it's okay to try it and have fun with it and see if you even want to be a part of it.
Great advice. So excited, so happy that you are here to help our guests, to share your wisdom and just spread your great energy. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to talking with you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, friend. I hope you had as much fun today as I did. A big thanks to Julie Marty Pearson for reminding us that story is the bridge, community is the amplifier, and you don't need perfect to start. You need purpose and a plan. To connect with Julie, be sure to check out the Women's Podcaster Party. Head to juliemartypearson.com. We've got everything linked in the show notes. And if today's conversation lit a fire under you, make sure you follow and subscribe to the Gen X Remix so you never miss an episode. Be sure to leave us a quick 5-star review to help other midlife builders find us. And grab your free Corporate Escape Starter Kit. In the show notes, it will help you map your next steps, clarity offers, and simple systems to start earning before you exit. I'm Tabatha Jones, the Corporate Escape Sherpa. Until next time, take one small, bold step this week. Your next act is calling. Let's answer it. Take care.